Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You didn't mince words this morning when you opened up the day. Has it lived up or down to your expectations so far?
The wild thing is I actually did mince words. There's a couple other things I could have used. But, I don't, regardless if things got better, they should have never been that bad in the first place this morning. And that just looked totally irresponsible. And it made us, look like we don't know what we're doing here in the state. And it was a result of some very poor decision making, but it was political decision making that led the day. And that's why we saw ourselves in that light. That's why we see national coverage of long lines outside of polling locations. There were reporters from New York Times, other outlets with national reach who had people on the ground here in Wisconsin because they knew exactly what was going to happen if we held an election today.
From the folks that you have talked to, and certainly what you've seen as well, let's try to describe this for people not in Wisconsin. What are you seeing and what are you hearing described to you?
Yeah, people just are, a lot of people are just wondering, like, how can you even have an election? Folks reached out in the days prior and said, what is going on? There's literally no way you can have an election. Are you all serious that an election is still going to take place? People laughed about Iowa and the caucuses, but caucuses are a partisan thing. This is an actual election that's being administered, by the state of Wisconsin, and that's the real problem here. Is that Governor Evers made his decision to issue the order yesterday to try to postpone the election, to cancel this one and move it to a later date. Which, in theory and thought, it would be a little bit more safer to do that. And right after that happened, Republicans rushed to the courts, to their friends in the courts. I talk, about, courts being, the fallacy of nonpartisan courts, especially the highest courts, because they knew exactly who to run to see their will be done.
I'm imagining that you've talked to voters either or have heard enough from voters who are in one of two camps. Either they stayed for the long wait or they didn't stay. They saw the lines or heard about the lines and didn't go. You can pick either one, but tell me about the voters that you've heard from or heard about who either have stuck through it all or said it wasn't worth their effort.
Yeah, I've seen people. The most people I've heard from are the ones who had an absentee ballot and took it to a drop-off location. The ones that were able to do that early to try to get it out of the way. Haven't had a chance to talk to too many people who've waited in line. I've only seen what's been online and with some people that I know who've gone there, or others who've gone to observe. And it's not the kind of scenario that you should ever you should want to see. And this is an explicit voter suppression tactic. You go from 180 polling locations in Milwaukee down to 5 and expect a free and fair election to take place. That's absurd.
So not only is it that people are disillusioned, but they go right to being disenfranchised?
Well, absolutely, people are being disenfranchised. I mean, how can you expect? I've seen people online that talked about not having received their ballots, and they have a partner or or spouse who is immunocompromised, and it would be irresponsible. They feel irresponsible to go out there to vote and come back home to their partner because they don't know what may happen. As we look at the cases of asymptomatic transmissions. So it's putting a whole lot of people in jeopardy, and folks are having to make some real hard decisions. People who've never missed an election before, people who want to participate in democracy. And you have a senior population too. A lot of folks don't like to vote absentee. A lot of people like to show up to the polling location. You see your friends that work at the polling sites, but understanding that this time will be a little bit different. I think that there was no fair accommodations made for those people, and those who requested a ballot who didn't even get one, because I've seen a lot of those stories. I mean, they're just being expected to literally weather this storm and go out there and risk it all to vote, and that is not a fair ask. I mean, you talk about poll taxes. This is something that's totally different.
Well, what we have seen over the past few days from folks in the on the Republican side of the legislature include sending a letter to the governor asking that churches and synagogues be open for Easter and Passover, a letter to the governor asking that golf courses be open, certainly the continued comparisons to the flu and the continued pressure to get businesses reopened. Do you feel like despite all the headlines and the statistics that there are still people in Wisconsin not taking this pandemic seriously? And if
Oh,
so,
absolutely.
what is it that you want them to see or appreciate that they're not clearly seeing in their own zip code right now?
There are a lot of people who are not taking this seriously, and I think that at this moment, this calls on us to not be selfish. I think so many people are giving up so much, and to think that a lot of folks feel like they're the only ones who are giving up anything, which couldn't be farther from the truth. And even there are those who would like to open up their religious institutions for this coming week and weekend. But we do have great partners too. I host a weekly faith leaders call just to keep them updated and to give them information so they can make informed decisions and also get that information out to their parishioners. And we have the Wisconsin Council of Churches, we have Interfaith Council, we have Islamic Society, we have a number of Jewish groups who've come on board and have, I believe if they didn't put it out today, they're putting it out soon, but a letter that is in support of the stay-at-home order, a letter that is in support of not congregating despite the fact that we are approaching one of the highest holy days across religion. And they get it. They want to be responsible. They know that they have to be responsible. It's not just them, it's entire congregations that could be put at risk, especially, you think about the number of elderly folks and people with health issues, underlying health concerns that could see a fatal outcome if they contract COVID-19.
It seems, though, that as striking an image as it is today to see all the lines of voters, the more striking, the longer lasting image may be that refrigerated truck that has just been put outside of Sinai Aurora,
Yeah.
Near parts of Milwaukee that have a higher percentage of the fatalities from the COVID outbreak so far. That had to strike you as
Oh,
something
absolutely.
to see that potential temporary morgue was being set up.
Yeah, and that's the reality that we're dealing with, and we're seeing health disparities, we're seeing income disparities, we're seeing outcomes and or people's environmental experiences. We're seeing that all play out. These things all trend the same. They all trend equally, and the people who are being impacted are the same people who get the worst of it every other time. Milwaukee's Black community, the north side of Milwaukee, is feeling the crunch right now. Over half of the deaths, at least as of yesterday, 40 out of 77 of the deaths in our state were in Milwaukee, primarily concentrated in the Black community.
Let us look at some of the people that are trying to do something rather heroic given the circumstances, and that would be the poll workers in those 5 locations in Milwaukee and elsewhere. What do you have to say for those folks and their efforts?
I want to give a sincere thank you to them and know that this is not something I would have ever asked them to do. They did it anyway, and they should be thanked on in for their heroism, for their will to protect democracy. People don't go out and work the poll just because it's fun. It's out of a sense of duty. It's a sense of patriotism that calls them to work the polls to make sure that people can exercise their right to vote. They should be thanked anyway, but to put themselves in harm's way as they are now is something that's equally frustrating for me because they never should have had to do it.
Last question, moving on and moving forward from here, what happens between now and November? What kind of message do you bring, taking off your official duties hat and putting on your Democratic candidate or Democratic Party hat rather? What are you saying from what happened today moving all the way toward November?
I say, remember who did this. Remember the fact that we stood up to try to ensure people's safety, not just today and not just in this moment, but forever. Throughout life. And it's the same people that denied 80,000 folks in Wisconsin access to health insurance are the same people that are denying so many others the right to vote, the ability to vote. There is one party that made that happen. There's one party that sat comfortably with that happening. And, I'm happy that I'm not a part of that one.
Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes, it's been a pleasure having you on Up North News. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, thank you.